Alright, hi friends, my name's Naomi. Welcome back. So today I'm gonna be talking through every single book I've read in 2025 so far. So I'm gonna be talking about all the books that I've read from January all the way to July, and that is a whopping number of 42 books. I definitely lowered my Goodreads challenge this year. It's only 60, I think, books. That I read like 100 last year, but I just didn't want to have that pressure this year, so I actually did a 50 reading goal challenge, but because I was so close to it, I made it more books. So right now I think it's 60, which I know that I'll reach this year. But yeah, so I just want to talk about the 42 books that I've read so far this year. I broke everything down by month, so obviously I'll go January, February, March, etc, etc. I'm hoping to do it a little quicker type of videos, so I'm going to be doing the yes, no, maybe. So I'll definitely talk a little bit more about the book and how much I liked it or enjoyed it and stuff like that, but I'm gonna try to do the yes, no, maybe. And if you haven't seen that, pretty much people do like a wrap-up and they'll show the book and be like, this is a yes, or this is a no, or this is a maybe. So I'm gonna try to do that, but of course I'll go into a little bit more detail than that. But yeah, let's get started. So in the month of January, I read 8 books. Do not be impressed by that number. Half of those books were graphic novels. The very first book I read in 2025 was a graphic novel called Noise. This graphic novel is extremely short. It's only 28 pages long. I can't say much about it, but like I said, it is called Nguyen, and it is by Kathleen Raymundo, and it follows 2 people in a school, a very introverted girl and a very talkative little boy who has one wish, and I can't say much besides that. It's only 28 pages long, so I'll probably give away everything, but for me this was a yes. It's only 28 pages long, so you can't really waste your time with this. Like, it's so short that I read this probably in like 15 minutes, so I would definitely give it a try. The next thing I read, the second book that I read, was another graphic novel, and this one was a middle grade graphic novel called The New Girl by Cassandra, Calin. I gave this a 4 out of 5. Another yes. I mean, graphic novels to me will always be a yes because they're so like short and you can read them so easily that for me, unless I really dislike the graphic novel, they most likely will always be a yes. Because you can't really waste your time with these. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I gave it a 4 out of 5. This one follows Leah, and she lives in Romania, and this is basically the story of her moving to the United States and her immigration and her getting situated in the United States. It is a middle grade graphic novel, so of course her being thrusted into the world of middle grade and kind of like high school-ish, in that transition, I related to this so much. Not my phone going off right now, but I related to this so much because this was kind of like the story of when I moved here from Puerto Rico to the US, and I was kind of thrusted into 9th grade high school, and it was a lot to get used to, so I really liked it. I gave it a 4 out of 5. The next thing I read was an actual book, and this one is a yes, and that is The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. I'm really excited. Liz Moore is actually coming to Cleveland soon, so that'll be exciting to meet her. So this one is a mystery thriller. It is also set in a camp, in a summer camp in the 1970s. This is, like I said, mystery thriller, but also feels very historical fiction to me. This had like dual timelines, multiple POVs. It was just very immersive. Liz Moore's writing is really incredible, so I really loved this, and it basically follows the story of a girl that goes missing in a summer camp in the 1970s and kind of that mystery. Like I said, dual timelines, multiple POVs, figuring out what happened. I don't love to say much about these because it's a mystery. It gives it away if I say anything, in my opinion, but like I said, I gave it a 4 out of 5, and this is a yes. You should definitely try it. The next thing I read, take a guess, it's another graphic novel, and this was called Pilu of the Woods. This was so cute. This is a middle grade graphic novel, honestly bordering towards like a child's graphic novel, but I was in the mood. It's January. It just felt very cozy to me. This one is by May K. Nguyen. Sorry, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but this one was just a really heartwarming story about friendship and loss. Our main character, her name's Willow, and she meets this like lost tree spirit, and their name is Pilu, and basically they become friends, and Willow tries to help Pilu out. Pilu is trying to find her way home, and it's just really sweet, and you should definitely read it. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. I would say this is definitely a yes. I'll say maybe a 3.75 out of 5 stars, so definitely bordering towards 4. I think it's probably just really short, and it didn't really go into too much depth. Yeah, it's 150 pages, so you know, you can only get so much out of a story with 150 pages, but I did really enjoy it, and I would say yes, you should try it. I am speaking so much with my hands today. The next one that I read was another graphic novel, and it is The Secret Garden, and this is by, the adapter was Maria Marsden, and the illustrator was Hannah Luchtefeld. The Secret Garden is definitely a classic. I've never read The Secret Garden, so this was my first time with this story. If you know The Secret Garden, you know what this graphic novel is about. I gave it a 4 out of 5, and if you've read The Secret Garden, I would say yes, you should totally read this, and if you haven't read The Secret Garden, also a yes, you should try it in a graphic novel form. I thought it was great, so yeah. The next book that I read is Under Lock and Key by Lana Ferguson. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. For me, I would say this one is a maybe. It just depends on what you like and the mood you're in. I'm usually not like a smutty or spicy romance girly, but at the time, I really wanted a spicy romance that had a Scottish man in it. So at the time, this was a full-on yes. Would this be a full-on yes right now? Probably no, because I'm not into spicy and smutty things right at this moment, so it just depends what you're into. But yeah, at the time when I read this, I was eating it up. It was everything. I did give it a 3 out of 5, and a 3-star rating for me, it's not bad. It means that I enjoyed my reading experience, but I didn't like really like it or love it. But this one follows Key. Her name's Kiana, and she goes to Scotland right after she finds out that her father died. They had a strong connection, but he didn't really talk a lot about his past in Scotland, so she goes because she wants to feel connected to her dad and to her roots and all of that. She has a weird relationship with her grandma. She meets this Scottish man, and there's a lot of feuds between families in Scotland. So I don't know, it was everything. It's definitely magical realism. There is a Loch Ness monster aspect to this book. So yeah, I mean, if you like smutty romance, monster romance, you would probably enjoy this. But it's just what you're into, I guess. The next book I read was a 5 out of 5 stars. For me, this is a yes, but I know that this isn't a yes for everybody. This is a horror book. I've been really into horror this year, and this one follows Charlie and Eve, and they're a young queer couple who flips houses, and they get this really good deal on this house, and they want to flip it. And once they move in there, this weird family just shows up on their doorstep and say, hey, we used to live here, can we come in and like just look around? And one of them, her name's Eve, she's a very people-pleasing type person, and she doesn't know how to say no, so she lets them in. And once they come into the house, this weird family, weird things start happening, and they kind of can't leave. So a lot of shit goes down. I really loved this book. I give it a 5 out of 5. She's horror, mystery thriller, paranormal. Like I said, I really liked it. Oh my god, I have my Goodreads open in front of me, and I just read that it's soon to be a Netflix movie, so that's exciting. Also, this book is by Marcus Kliewer. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but yeah. Also, as you've noticed, all of the books have been pictures on the screen because I have been on a book buying ban for many months. I think it's almost been a year that I haven't, like, I buy books here and there, but not as many as I used to. I like cut down quite a lot. So the first book that I'm actually going to show you physically is the last book that I read in January, and this was for my book club, and this is called The Dead Don't Need Reminding: In Search of Fugitives, Mississippi, and Black TV Shirt TV nerd shit by Julian Randall. This is another 5 out of 5 stars for me. I usually don't really like rate nonfiction or memoir, but this one felt so different to me. Like I said, this is a memoir and it's about Julian Randall, and it follows, well, it doesn't really follow like a story per se, but it's definitely following his story after he is coming out from this really big, not my timer, that's crazy. He's coming out from a really big deep depression. I mean, this book, I really liked it because it has a lot of pop culture references. Like, let me open here. I know he talks about like Kanye West, Grief featuring Kanye West. It's a lot about black culture. There's BoJack Horseman in here. It just had a lot of like pop culture references, Spider-Man as well, and I just really liked it. I think it dealt with really serious topics and African American culture. It had some pop culture moments, grief, family, and he's definitely, let me read the description here so I don't get it wrong. It says, Julian Randall's return from the cliff edge of a harrowing depression and his determination to retrace the hustle of a white passing grandfather to the Mississippi town from which he was driven amid threats of tar and feather. Like I said, this is very lyrical writing too. I really enjoyed his writing. It was very heartfelt. There are some pop culture moments that he definitely turns into very deeply and personal like explorations of his family, his grief, his life. Like I said, I loved it. I'm reading on here. It has references to Spider-Verse, Jordan Peele movies, BoJack Horseman, etc, etc. I really loved it, but also you have to know these pop culture moments too. I think I loved it so much because I knew every single pop culture moment he was speaking of. So yeah, this is definitely yes for me. All right, we are back. So my camera died, so I'm coming back to you after like 2 hours of letting my camera charge. So where were we? We were moving into the month of February. I only read 2 books, so it'll be a quick one. So the first book I read was If You Can't Take the Heat by Michael Ruhlman. This is a young adult coming of age story. I enjoyed this. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. I would definitely say this is a maybe. It just depends on the mood that you're into. I really wanted to read a young adult coming of age story. I love books that have to do with like a kitchen or cooking and stuff like that. And our main character, he is in high school and he just injured his leg. His whole life is sports and like football, and he just injured his leg. And then that summer, because he can't play his favorite sport, he somehow gets a job at a fancy French kitchen, and I love that like, setting of a kitchen and all of the drama. I worked at like a fast food restaurant, so like I kind of like get the drama and like all of the people that you meet at these restaurants. It just gave me that like feeling again. This is a very, very YA like Sweet Bitter by Stephanie Danler. I really liked it. He's also going through like this huge breakup, and then he obviously finds romance at this French restaurant. It is set in the 80s, and it is set in Cleveland, Ohio, which was fun because they do reference a lot of Cleveland stuff. So that was fun. But I gave this a 3 out of 5. This is definitely a maybe. It just depends if you're in the mood for like a young adult contemporary coming of age story that has to do with cooking. If you're into that sort of thing, I would recommend this. And the other book I read, I also gave a 3 out of 5 stars. It is The Inmate by Freida McFadden. This one follows Brooke, and she is a nurse and she gets a job at this jail, and she kind of has to stay low-key because her high school sweetheart ex-boyfriend is an inmate at this jail, and the reason why he's in jail is because she confessed or did a testimony against him, and supposedly he murdered a bunch of people, including some of her friends. So yeah, this one was juicy. Freida McFadden is just good at like mystery thriller and like just a lot of drama and a lot of plot twists. Like I said, I enjoyed it. I give it a 3 out of 5. But yeah, for me, this is definitely a maybe. If you are a Freida McFadden fan, then of course this is a yes. So for the month of March, I read 4 books, and to start off, I read The Wedding People by Alison Espach. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. This one follows Phoebe, and she is traveling to the Cornwall Inn, and basically, I mean, it's not a spoiler, this is basically the premise of the book, but basically she is going to this inn to end her life. She is very depressed, and then at the Cornwall Inn there is currently a wedding going on, and she in a weird way meets the bride-to-be and becomes close friends with her, and things just start changing around. She meets someone. This is a very, like, it does sound depressing, but it is a very feel-good type of book of like having a different outlook in life, very slice of life novel. For me, this is a yes. I do think a lot of people would enjoy this. Like I said, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and yeah, I really liked it. The next book I read is Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney. For me, I guess this would be my first no. I currently have the Goodreads up because I read this, but it was just so unmemorable to me that I don't remember much. Like, I'm reading the description and like that I remember now a little bit, but I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. Like I said, for me, this is a no. I know Alice Feeney wrote Rock, Paper, Scissors, which I really enjoyed. This is another mystery thriller book, and this one follows Grady, and he is an author, and he is calling up his wife to tell her some really good news, and during that phone call, something happens that he hears his wife like get into some sort of trouble, and then nothing, and his wife goes missing. So a year later, he's still grieving that loss because she's still missing, and he is very unable to write, so he goes to this like Scottish like cabin, and there he tries to write and weird things start happening. But yeah, this was a 2 out of 5. I did not love. So the next one I have, I gave it 4 out of 5, and this is definitely a yes. You should try this one. It's The Deep Dark by Molly Knox Ostertag. I never know how to say her name, I'm sorry. But I love Molly Knox. She's written a whole bunch of other graphic novels like Roll Call, The Witch Boy, and The Girl from the Sea. I love all of her graphic novels, and this one was no exception to that. Like I said, 4 out of 5. This one is queer. It is fantasy, paranormal. It follows Magdalena Herrera, which I love. She was Hispanic, and she's taking care of her grandma. She has like this big dark paranormal secret going on, and then there's this other girl that comes back home from her childhood who remembers some secrets and things from Magdalena's childhood, and she comes back to town and kind of confronts her about these secrets. So I really enjoyed it. It's kind of a thick graphic novel. I want to say, let's see, it is 480 pages, so it's pretty lengthy for a graphic novel, but I really liked it. I would definitely recommend that you give it a try. Okay, the next one that I have is Anita de Monte, Laughs Last. This was the last book I read in March, and this is by Xóchitl González. I read this for my book club, and I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. After book club discussion though, that rating did change. I would definitely do like my research on this. I still really, when I was reading the book and I didn't know about certain things, this was a 5 out of 5. I loved the writing and the story, and I had read one of Xóchitl González's books before, and I didn't really love Olga Dice Dreaming, but that is personal trauma because it was about Hurricane Maria, and that like weighs heavy in my heart because it's about Puerto Rico. But this one, and if you don't know, this one follows 2 female artists, and they're kind of connected. They're decades apart, but their works become connected. It is very interesting, but the main focus of the book is Anita, who is this famous artist in New York, and she is basically killed by her artist boyfriend, but because her artist boyfriend is white, and he is very well known in like the artist industry, he kind of gets away with it. And the other artist, her name is Raquel, she's kind of discovering the story of Anita. Like I said, I really love this book, but I had no idea that this artist, Anita, who I thought was fictional in the book, I didn't know this was like an actual person. It was tough because the whole book is about kind of telling Anita's story and getting her story out there, and like justice for Anita, I guess. But the fact that Xóchitl González didn't even like acknowledge like in the beginning of the book that this was about like a real person, and once I listened to a podcast about Anna, who was the real person that died and this happened to, that her boyfriend basically murdered her, when I listened to a podcast about her life, it was very much like everything that happens in this book. So it felt very copy paste, like just not stealing the story, but like it would have been nice to know that this was an actual person, because the whole premise of the book is kind of giving life to Anita's story, and it felt like she was given life to Anna's story, but we didn't know unless like some people did like a lot of research. And then I know that in the reprint of this book, she very briefly mentions Anita, or Anna, in memory of Anna. She very briefly mentions her, but I don't think there's any mention really about who she was like as a real person. So that makes me very conflicted, but I did really like the book when I didn't know this information. So yeah, I guess this is definitely a maybe. Definitely do your research and learn about all of that. But I did really like the book as a form of art, I guess. The next book I read was for a book club here local in Cleveland, and it is Cross My Heart by Roxy Sloane. For me, this was a no. I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars. This is very like smutty, spicy romance, and that is just not like truly my cup of tea. I just felt like it was a very surface level like storyline, I guess. This follows a girl whose sister died, and she goes to the university that her sister went to uncover secrets of how she died, I guess. And there is Anthony St. Clair, the Duke of Oxford, who is a reckless enigma and my greatest temptation, I mean. Yeah, it was not good in my opinion. Yeah, I gave it a 2 out of 5. I would not recommend this, but if you're a smutty romance gal and that's your cup of tea, maybe you would like this. The next couple of books that I read were graphic novels, so I'll go quickly through them. I read another Molly Knox Ostertag graphic novel, and this was Roll Call. This follows 2 best friends in middle school or high school, and they have like a Dungeons and Dragons club at high school. One of them is very much, she just wants her relationship with her best friend to stay that way, and once they open this club and like different people start joining, she really misses her friend. It's definitely very Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know anything about that game, but it was a very fun, quick read, and I enjoyed it. So this was a yes, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Next book I read is a children's book. I was gifted this. I assistant directed a play for here in Cleveland, and it was about El Coquí in a way, which is a Puerto Rican tree frog, and our director as a gift gifted us The Legend of the Coquí, and it is a children's book. It's about like El Coquí and kind of its origin. It was really cute. I mean, 3 out of 5. It is a children's book. I read it in like 5 minutes. And then the next graphic novel I read, where is she? I read issue 1 of I Was a Fashion School Serial Killer. If you know me, you know that one of my favorite reality TV shows is Project Runway. So I love a fashion school, and then also our main character, she's a serial killer, and I love this cover. I've only read 2 issues of this so far, but I'm gonna hold off and just wait until the volume comes out, because I just cannot do these issues. Like, they're just so short that I'm like, I just need more, so I just like need to get the volume. So yeah. And then the other book I read this month was All Better Now by Neil Shusterman. I really like this one. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. This is a dystopian like young adult novel. I really liked it. It is in a world where there is this virus triggered, and people get this virus. Some people die, but the people that live get the long-term effect that once they are cured from the disease, they get the feeling or the effect that they don't have any stress, depression, nothing. They're just happy all of the time. And this sounds great, but once you really get into it in the politics, this is really bad for capitalism, guys. Yeah, I guess like people in power that like thrive from people not being happy with like their bodies or just their lives in general, and capitalism just really runs on people being not content about something in their life. It's kind of ruining the world, this disease. So it was really fun. You see from a lot of different point of views, from a very rich millionaire, someone who is happy all of the time, a girl who is totally immune to the disease. So it's very interesting. I loved it. I love Neil Schusterman and all the dystopian that he writes. I love, if you know me, you know that I love sci-fi. So this was a fun little read. For the month of May, I read 7 books. So the very first one that I read was Plague House Issue. I always want to say Issue 1. I don't remember much about this, to be completely honest. I had to look at the description. I gave it a 4 out of 5, but the fact that I didn't remember makes me want to bump down my rating. So I guess this is a maybe. Of course, this is only issue 1. I will be reading the full volume with like the first 5 to 7 issues of this. But from what I see, this is a horror comic book. I'm gonna have to reread this because I'm reading the description and I do not remember this, but this one follows Oren, and 13 years ago he was like a family man, and now in present time he is on death row for killing his entire family. And it has something to do with this house. I guess this house like plagues you and makes you kill your whole family, I guess. So I'm gonna have to reread this because now I feel like I didn't even read it because I had to look at it. I could not remember. The next graphic novel that I read through NetGalley. This actually comes out on August 26th, which is like 2 days from now. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. This is definitely a yes. This is called A Bite of Pepper by Balis Lorenci, and this one follows Peppermint. I love her name. And Peppermint is a vampire, and she loves skateboarding. She's a really cool, just normal teenage vampire, but she's really sick of her mom trying to get her set up with a bride, because once they have a bride or like a partner, they become fully immortal. So this is definitely queer, and I loved it so much. Peppermint meets Anna, who is an art student, and it's really cute. They go through adventures. I felt like usually graphic novels don't go into too much depth of each character in the books, because I mean there's only so many pages and so much you can do with a graphic novel, but I felt like this one really went into depth with our 2 main characters, and I just really loved this one. So yeah, 4 out of 5. You should definitely try this one. The next book that I read in May was Sunrise on the Reaping. I don't have to say much about this, but this was a 5 out of 5 stars. Definitely a yes. If you read The Hunger Games, you have to read this one. If you live under a rock, Sunrise on the Reaping is a prequel to The Hunger Games, and it follows Haymitch, who was Katniss's mentor in The Hunger Games, and it follows his Hunger Games and how he got there. Obviously, this was incredible. Suzanne Collins definitely did her thing in this one. She kind of lost me at the Ballads of Songbirds and Snakes. I did not like that book, but this one, she got me back. So I loved it. Yeah, 5 out of 5. The next thing I read was another graphic novel that I loved. I read this for my comic book club here in Cleveland, and it was Squire by Nadia Shamaz and Sarah Alfagi. I'm so sorry if I'm saying that incorrectly, but I loved this graphic novel so much. I read 2 graphic novels that I gave 5 out of 5 stars, this being one of them. This is 100% yes. You should totally read this. This one follows a young girl. Her name's Aisa, and she lives in the Bait Saiji Empire, and her greatest dream is to become a squire. She is from the Ornu people, and in this empire, the Ornu people are kind of looked down upon, and I guess they're the people that they're fighting against. And she, because the empire is at war, she can finally enlist in this very competitive squire program. So there's definitely like a training arc. It's a young adult. I really enjoyed it. She becomes friends with some of her military like friends in there. there's secrets, and I really love this graphic novel. If you haven't read this, you totally should. I loved it. The next book I read, I really enjoyed. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I would say this is a maybe, because this is definitely a weird horror novel, and I know that this is not for everyone. So this one is for the weird horror girlies, and it is Walk in Practice by Doki Min. Like I said, this is horror, this is queer. This follows a non-binary alien that is on planet Earth, and they're the last of their kind, and basically the way that they can survive and get their powers is having sex with humans and then killing them right afterwards. It's so hilarious. This is translated Korean book, and I really liked it. I thought it was so much fun. The audiobook is incredible. The narrator is giving non-binary realness, and I just really liked it. Yeah, I really liked this book. Like I said, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars from what I remember. And yeah, but definitely it's more of a weird horror fiction type of book. So the next book I read, I gave a 3 out of 5 stars, and that was The Dire Days of Willowweep Manor. I would say this is a maybe. It is a graphic novel, so it's not like a huge waste of time if you were to not like it. But like I said, The Dire Days of Willowweep Manor by Shannon K. Garrity. This one follows a young girl. I believe she's like in middle school or maybe high school, and she loves the Regency era, so she dresses in school like with those dresses and stuff. Somehow she ends up in like a time travel machine, and she goes back in time to this like Regency era mansion, and it's all of the tropes of a very like Mr. Darcy character and the side character, and basically this reality island setting is at jeopardy, and she has to help the island survive. Obviously she's falls in love. There is a sequel. I haven't read it yet, but yeah, I give this like a 3 out of 5. It was okay. The last book I read in May was The Great Divide by Cristina Enriquez. I know that I own this book, but I cannot find it, and it should be pretty easy for me to find books because I have them color-coded. I can't find it, but I know that I own it. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I would definitely say this is a maybe. I really loved it, so I would say pick this up if you love a historical fiction and that is very lyrically and beautifully written, and it's very character based. This one is set in Panama, and during the time where the Panama Canal was being built. It follows 2 main characters, Ana and Omar, and they are moving from their prospective places. So Ana is from Barbados, and she's 16 years old, and she moves to Panama to find work and to send her mom back money for her sister and her mom. Omar is in the same situation, and there's a bunch of other like characters and POVs that you see all of their POVs and they all connect. I really loved it. I thought it was very beautifully written for historical fiction, and I really liked it. But I know when I went to book club, most people gave this like a 3 out of 5. It was special to me, but yeah, for me this is a yes, but for most I would say maybe. All right, last 2 months. So in the month of June I read 6 books. And the very first book I read is Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I would definitely say this is a yes. I love Abby Jimenez and her writing and her romance novels. This one follows Xavier and Samantha, and they meet because Samantha goes to the vet, and Xavier is a I can't say that word. Veterinarian. Holy shit, that was hard. And he is like a very sought out bachelor in the town. Samantha and him have kind of like a little tiff at the beginning, but then they go on a date and fall in love. But Samantha has to move because there is a crisis going on in her family. Her mom suffers from, I believe, dementia, and she has to go back home and deal with that. So she has to move away right after she falls in love. So yeah, I really like this book. It was definitely a different format because you see them like falling in love very much at the beginning, and the rest is kind of like the struggles. And usually Abby Jimenez's books are very much like you see them fall in love throughout the novel. So it was definitely a different format for Abby Jimenez, but I really liked it. So this is definitely a yes for me. The next graphic novel I read was Spy Island by Chelsea Kane. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. This one is just very like heist type of graphic novel. It is very fast paced. It follows a heist and there's a ton of different characters. I love the art in this graphic novel, and there's like different formats of like interviews and TV and articles and stuff, and I really liked the format of it, so I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. The next graphic novel, because I read another graphic novel I read, was Thieves by Lucy Bryan, and this one was really cute. It follows these two girls in high school, and one of them has an addiction to stealing from different houses. She goes to different parties and she steals something from every house, and in order to get better and like get rid of that, not bad habit because that can be like an addiction, but in order to set peace with everyone, she tries to go to all of these parties and return the items that she has stolen, and there's a little bit of a love story in there. I really liked it. I gave it like a 3.75 out of 5 stars, and that one I would say is definitely a maybe. It just depends on whether or not you're like wanting to read a graphic novel about that, I guess. So yeah. The next book I read, I would say for me it was a no, and honestly I'm gonna have to look up what this book was, because I mean I know I read it, but that's how memorable it was. I know I gave this like a 2 out of 5 stars, and that was Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. This was horror, queer literary fiction, and it follows this couple, and one of them goes in like on this submarine. From what I remember, she goes on a submarine, and once she is back, she's just not the same person, and you see both of their point of views and how much the other person has changed since this mission. I just found it very slow, very confusing. I could not follow along. Like I said, I give it a 2 out of 5. This is definitely a no for me. But yeah, I know that so many people enjoyed this, so I was like shook that I didn't like it. So yeah. And unfortunately I have another book that I gave a 2 out of 5 stars, and this one hurts my soul, and that is Bochica by Carolina Flores Sergiaro. I had such high hopes for this book, and once I started reading it, I just found it boring, and I felt really bad because you know me, and I love a book by a Latino Hispanic author. I'll do anything for that. And it said that it was supposed to give Mexican Gothic and The Shining, but I've come to learn that any book that is horror written by a Latina, they're gonna say it's Mexican Gothic. And yeah, this one was set in Colombia in 1920s. So this one follows Antonia, and her and her family moved into this house, and this house is another like haunted house situation that her mom passes away in this house, and her dad is so sad that he tries to burn down the house with Antonia still inside. And 3 years later they decide to go back because they have rebuilt this house, and they decide to go back to this sort of party, but weird things start happening. So Antonia of course goes on like a mission to try to find these things out. To me it was very slow moving. I think the pacing, to me, it was a little boring, and I feel bad saying that. Yeah, there's like a journalist that she like teams up with. I don't know, I didn't really care, and that was unfortunate. So yes. The very last book I read on the month of June is where we're at. Yes, June, was The Many Deaths of Layla Starr by Ram V. This is a yes. I gave this a 5 out of 5. This is the other graphic novel that I gave 5 out of 5 stars to. I loved this graphic novel. If anyone has any recommendations of anything like this, please let me know. But this one follows the character of Death, and basically God is firing her because there is someone who is born who will create immortality, so there is no use anymore for death. So she's fired and made into immortal and sent to Earth, and basically her whole time on Earth she spends all of the time trying to find this person who will create immortality in order to kill them so she can have her job back. This is so beautiful. The story, the art, everything just beautifully combined into this graphic novel, and it was chef's kiss. I loved it so much. This is definitely a yes. You should read this at some point in your life. All right, and we're on the last month of July, where I read 10 books. The very first book I read, I really liked it. This was a 4 out of 5 stars, and that was Pizza Girl by Jean Keong Fraser. This one follows a young Asian American girl. She's a teenager and she is pregnant. She's a pizza girl and she lives with her boyfriend and her mom, who is a very smothering mother, and her boyfriend is a very loving, caring boyfriend. Like I said, she's a pizza girl in this pizza place, obviously, and she becomes enamored or like obsessed with this woman who is a customer at the pizza shop that comes in weekly and orders pickle pizzas for her son. They strike up some sort of friendship, and I really liked it. It was like a mix of A Simple Favor and Juno. Yeah, it was incredible. I loved it. The next book I read is Oye by Melissa Mogollon. This was another 4 out of 5 stars. This was definitely a yes for me. I feel like a lot of people would really love this. Our main character is Luciana, and the whole book is told in phone calls, and Luciana is calling her older sister Mari, and basically going back and forth with all of the family drama. It starts off with their grandma not wanting to leave Florida, and there's a hurricane happening in Florida. I definitely related a lot to Luciana. She has like a lot on her plate, and she has to take care of her family and kind of be always there, while her older sister Mari is like off in college and she doesn't have as many like responsibilities, I guess. And there's just a lot of family drama going on. I really liked it, and I love the format of the phone calls. This was an awesome audiobook, and yeah, it was a 5 out of 5 stars for me, and would definitely recommend. The next book I read was a graphic novel, and that is The Nice House on the Lake Volume 1 by James Tynion IV. This one it's kind of a mystery. It was really fun. I gave this a 4, I think, a 4 out of 5, maybe a 3.75 out of 5 stars. This one's a maybe. It just depends on the graphic novels that you read. I would say this felt more adult and darker to me. The start of this novel is this very large group of people getting invitations to this nice house on the lake by their very old friend that they all know from different walks of life, and they all get there and their friend who invited all of them is not there, and like a day passes and randomly on the news the world is sort of on fire, and the world is ending, and they are on this little lake house, and they're basically protected from the outside world, and they don't know why they got invited there, why they got chosen. So yeah, that was that one. I really liked it. It was 3.75. The next book I read was The Sons of El Rey by Alex Espinosa. This was another 5 out of 5. I read this for book club. Definitely a yes. I feel like this is such like a summer book in my opinion. This one has multiple points of views. It follows, oh my gosh, Ernesto, Julian, and I believe Freddie. I am blanking on their names, but this one centers all in wrestling. Ernesto became like a really popular wrestler in Mexico, which they're called lucha libre in Mexico, and it follows his story and how he became famous as a lucha libre wrestler. And it follows his son's story and his grandson's story. This is definitely very queer. It's a lot of fun, a lot of drama, and I really loved it, so you should read it too. Oh my god, why did I read so much? I feel like I'm almost done and then I'm not. The next book I read was Sweet Bitter by Stephanie Danler. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. This is definitely a maybe. For me, this is a yes, and I really liked it, but you have to be in the mood to like hate the main character because she is so like, she is messy, entitled, and just like, just not the best main character, but like you just have to be in the mood to hate the main character. She's a young girl that moves to New York City all by herself, and she gets a job at this very fancy restaurant in New York City. And I love reading like the culture of like a restaurant, and very much like the waitress dates a cook from the restaurant situation. She becomes enamored with one of the cooks in this restaurant, and there is sort of a weird love triangle in it. There's definitely a lot of drugs and messy situations and choices made by our main character. So I really liked it. I was in the mood for this at the time, so yeah, take it if you are into that sort of thing. The next graphic novel that I read is Helen of Windhorn by Tom King. This was a 4 out of 5 stars for me. I really liked this one. This is a fantasy graphic novel following Helen, and she is sent to live with her grandfather after the death of her father. Her late father, C.K. Cole, was a pulp writer, and he wrote these like very epic warrior fantasy novels. And basically her father would talk to Helen her whole life saying that these things, these fantasy worlds were true, but obviously nobody believed her. And she is sent to live with her grandfather, and basically she is starting to learn that all of these things that her dad said were true are actually true. This is all told in a interview format, and it is Helen's like tutor slash like maid who is talking to a reporter because they're asking about Helen's life and all of that. So I really like this novel. The art is so beautiful. It is very much fantasy and like historical fiction, and yeah, I really liked it. All right, 3 more books. So the next book that I read in July was Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This one is set in 1980s summer, and basically NASA just opened their space shuttle program, and it is the first time they're including women. So our main character Joan has always been obsessed with the stars, and obviously she applies to this space shuttle program for NASA, and yeah, it has a really cute love story at its center. I really like this book. Our main character Joan is a auntie, and I love the, I hate when it does that. This thing just fell on me and it scared the shit out of me. Anyway, as I was saying, our main character is an auntie, and I love the relationship that she has with her niece. I love that plot line, and the love story is so adorable and cute and heartbreaking and just wonderful, and I really loved it. So yeah, this was a 4 out of 5 stars for me. I love me some Taylor Jenkins Reid. The next book I read was The Love Haters by Catherine Center. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I love Catherine Center. She's one of my favorite romance authors, and this one followed Katie, and she is a video film producer, and she's basically thinking that she's going to be laid off sometime soon, and then she gets a job to profile Tom Hutch, who was this man who kind of became viral on TikTok for rescuing a dog, but he is very like stone-faced. He hates the internet, and she is tasked to profile this man. I really liked it. It's very cute. The Love Haters. Yeah, I loved it. 4 out of 5. It is a yes for me. The very last book I read was a graphic novel, and that is You Belong Here by Sarah Phoebe Miller. I like this book a lot. This is a yes for me. I got the chance to go meet Sarah Phoebe Miller, and she signed the book, and it was such a wonderful experience. This had been on my radar, and then I found out she was coming here, and I saw that E. Lockhart blurbed this book, so I was like, I have to read this graphic novel. So this is definitely a coming of age story. I love our main character. She is going through a breakup and getting into a very messy rebound. She's a theater girly, and it's definitely like going with the motions in high school. I really liked it. There's a lot of family drama. She has some trauma with her brother and her family in general. But yeah, I really liked it. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Oh my god, I have never been so tired of talking. All right, those were all of the 42 books that I read from January to July. I will be keeping up with my monthly wrap-ups because I do not want to have to do that again. That was a lot. But I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know what you're reading next, or if any of these books piqued your fancy. And I will see you soon with another video. Bye.